Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, and what I wanted to do today is spend a little bit of time talking about exam number one coming up on Thursday. And I'll do two screen shares here. This is going to be the first one. The first one I want to do is look at the format of the exam and give you an idea of the type of questions that I ask. And then I'll share the study guide and make some comments about the study guide. So just quickly on the format, it'll be done in class at 11 o'clock on Thursday morning. It'll be done on the big blue Scantrons, which I will supply, so you don't have to worry about Scantrons, but you will need a pencil and you will need a calculator. And you will have 50 minutes to do the exam. There are 50 questions and they are all multiple choice. And my experience has shown that you should have plenty of time to finish the exam. If you have accommodations and you have extra time, then we can take care of that on site on Thursday. Generally, what I do is I then bring those students up who do need a little extra time to finish the exam, come up into my lab or other office in Sid Richardson, and you can finish it there. Okay, so that's just the structure of the exam, and it covers chapters 1, 2, and 3. So how do I approach an exam, right? First off, there are some facts and knowledge-based questions in the exam, right? As I've said before, for example, I expect you to know what the population of the world is, or how much oil we consume in the US on a daily basis, for example. So there are some key statistics, but the type of question I ask, and you'll see some examples, and you actually have been exposed to these examples already as part of the quizzes, is I want you to think rather than just rely on rote memory. The way in which I set multiple choice questions is I try very hard. I think I've been successful in this, is to set questions with definitive answers, right? I never set one where all 5 answers are possibly correct, but I need to find the best one. My tests, I think, are pretty unambiguous, and there's never a multiple choice that has A, C, D, but not E, those types of responses. Those are just silly. So it should be pretty clear. There are multiple choice. It's all multiple choice, right? 50 of them. Within the exam, there will be graphs to interpret, a few simple calculations to do, which is why you'll need a calculator. And you'll see a table of data that you've never seen before. And often this instills a mild form of panic in the students, but please don't, because all of the concepts in that table you'll be able to answer if you've done the legwork on the preparation for the exam. So there are 4 types of questions that I set in an exam. One is knowledge-based questions. I've referred to this already in terms of the recall of information, dates, events, important people, and so on. There are questions that are focused on comprehension, right? Interpreting some information that I give you. There's application, which is using some information or an equation or something to solve a problem. And then there are analytical questions, breaking down material into various constituent parts. So here's an example of each. Just as an example, right? A knowledge-based question would be about what % of the world lives in acute poverty. Don't panic if you don't know the answer to this, because we haven't spent a lot of time on looking at acute poverty. But the answer would be somewhere around 20%. Now, in the updated graph that I showed you, it's actually dropping to below 20%. But I'm using this to give you an example of a knowledge-based question, but to look at the spread of potential answers, right? So, it's not 2% and it's not 55%. It's probably somewhere in the middle. So I try on these questions that if you cannot actually recall the information on a knowledge-based question, that logically you should be able to work through it, right? Here's another one. This is a comprehension type question. Utilitarian conservationists tend to believe that resources should be saved because they are important as a home for wildlife, in the conservation of aesthetic values, to our understanding of the biosphere, for a strong economic system, or to be used by all living things. So why is it comprehension? First, you have to understand what utilitarian conservation is, or pragmatic conservation. Remember, that was the ethos of the Roosevelt administration, right? Pragmatic utilitarian conservation. And that was resources should be used, conserved, but they should be used for the greater good for people here and now to build furniture and build homes. In other words, underpin a strong economic system. Nothing else here would be relevant. An analysis type question, right? So I would give you a plot that looks like this, for example. So you've got population on the one axis and time on the other axis. And the doubling time is either constant, unpredictable, continually increasing, continually decreasing, or none of the above. This isn't a trick question. A lot of people would look at this and go, well, the population's decreasing over time, so therefore it must be D. But it's actually C. Why? Because this focuses on the doubling time and the analytical application of doubling time, right? So remember, doubling time is the rule of 70 divided by R. And here the population is decreasing over time, which means that R must be going down, which means that it's going to take longer and longer and longer for that population to double. And then finally, an application, if the world growth rate was 10%, the population would double every what? 25, 55, or 125. So here you're applying the doubling time equation, which is 70 divided by the percentage, and 70 divided by 10% would give you 7. So that's just a very quick overview of the, my kind of approach in setting an exam and the type of questions that I ask. Let me just pull up the second thing I'd like to share here, which is the study guide. I often get asked questions along the lines of, is the exam more focused on the book or is it focused on the lecture material? And that's a very valid question, right? I don't ever go into the book and just find a page, pull out some esoteric fact and see whether you've memorized it or not. That's not really learning in my view, right? So what I do with this study guide is I lay out the big issues, themes, components, facts, and equations, whatever. I lay out the big take-home messages and important concepts that we've covered in class. I would hope that you would find the book would help explain things, perhaps if they're not quite as clear, or give you a different perspective on something. So, I always just assume that you're going to read the book and that that's going to be useful in preparing for the exam. But let the slides drive your preparation for the exam. So as you go through this, yes, I expect you to know who the key people were that we talked about in terms of the history of environmentalism, the difference between the Anthropocene and the Great Acceleration. There is a difference between those two, the difference between intrinsic and instrumental value, right? The scientific method, what is a law, what is a hypothesis, and so on. I don't want to read all of these verbatim as we go through here. What is R, the rate of natural increase? What is population growth rate, the doubling time, and how we can apply those, right? I want to just highlight this one here, how we apply the demographic indices. So things like total fertility rate, infant mortality rate, zero population growth. So this is where I'm going to give you a table of data that you've never seen before, and it's going to have data from 4 hypothetical countries. And if you understand what infant mortality, total fertility rate is, gross domestic product, you should be able to answer some questions on that data table, right? The energy is obviously a big section. I'm going to see where we are at on Tuesday at the end of class, and then I'll make a decision as to what we will include in that exam. So right now, the 4th bullet point from the bottom says I need you to be able to answer questions on the environmental impacts of and advantages of wind, solar, hydro, and biofuels, and how many homes can a wind turbine power. If we don't get to that by Tuesday, end of class, then that won't be in the exam, right? So I'll be very clear as to where we will end the material. And then what I've put down here are what I think are the key diagrams and tables that you need to look at. So that's just my scope and approach in setting the exam. I am happy to meet with you during next week if you want to set up some times to do that. And then what I always do is I will, one of the evenings next week, I haven't decided which one it'll be. It'll probably be Tuesday evening. It might be Wednesday, but I will make myself available on Zoom for a quick 1 hour open sort of office hours session. So, you know, you've got, I think, plenty of opportunity to either set an appointment, stop by my office. I'm going to be in my office in Rees Jones. Some of you have already popped in here, or do try and find a time to pop onto that open Zoom, which will be more of a Q&A session. The final point I want to make is I will, once Monday comes, I will open up the quizzes for you so that they will open for 24 hours before the exam. So at 11 o'clock on Wednesday, you'll have access to the quizzes to see what the answers were and where you went wrong. If indeed you did, most people seem to be doing very well on those quizzes, so that's awesome. That's the whole point of them. And you know, you'll get a sense as to the type of questions I ask in the exam. There should be no shocks on Thursday morning. As always, email me if you have any questions. Please don't email me and say, can you please explain the following 23 points? Because that won't happen. But if you have a specific question about something, I'll get back to you, hopefully in a timely manner. But please take advantage of trying to stop by my office or get onto that Zoom next week. Again, I haven't decided exactly which evening it will be. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a super weekend.